right, you should get that mark. All right, so now we're going to put in our holders over our paper. This is all an experiment, folks. All right. Okay, can people hear me now? So basically you just saw a very animated bald old man talking to you. All right. So the question I have for you all tonight is, how do you express yourself through what you wear? First things that come to mind. How do you express yourself through what you wear? Any responses? You don't have to write it down. How about you? Did you have something to say? No? Okay. You'd like to dress as a princess. Okay, great. Anyone else here dress as a princess?
In my mind.
Great. Okay. So we're thinking a little bit of the intersection between fashion and politics, and I think that's inspired by Camille Paglia. That's someone else. Kia Camille's installation that we are sitting in right now, and the autonomous rep, which is also part of the installation of MOCA. So I guess I'm kind of trying to think about what makes what we wear political. Or not. Is it political?
I think it is political. I mean, getting dressed is one of the, it has to be political because it's what you're putting on to face the world, right?
Uh-huh.
And so you're making your statement, whatever that is, through your clothing, and that's it at its most basic, you know, not necessarily having anything to do with fashion or anything like that. It's just you're putting your, whatever you're going to cover yourself with before you go out of the house, you know what I mean? And by necessity, it's going to say something about you and who you are and where you live and all of that.
Do you think it's about you, Mark, or is it about like a public persona? I'm not saying this to you personally, I'm just in general.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a public persona, I guess, because you go out, you know that somebody's going to look at you, and you're like, well, they're going to look at me, so what do I want them to see?
Yeah.
So you have to think about that. I mean, it's fraught with all kinds of things. For me, it's been a lifetime of grave mistakes in dressing, probably. I've worn some insane things in my life and had some really crazy ideas about what to wear and what is appropriate, and I still do. And I know it's often inappropriate in my case, and I get some really weird looks from people, but I don't know what to say. It's honest. I go through my own drama with my clothes, and everything I wear goes through such a freaking rigorous mess before it gets into my house that it's like, it's got to be black, it's got to have so many things before it even gets started. I have to make my own clothes most of the time.
Really? And why do you have to make your own clothes?
Because I'm so insane about what each thing needs to be.
Mm-hmm. Right.
As far as being comfortable, as far as being black, as far as having enough room in it so I don't feel compressed in any way.
Yeah.
I'm all about comfort in late life.
Yeah.
And I never was before. I mean, I would go out in, 8-inch heels and a corset back in the day.
Right.
And not care about comfort. But now comfort is like the first thing. It's the first thing for me.
It's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
It's like almost, for me, as I've gotten older, I have noticed that my body's become more important to me, you know? And I don't know, it's like because it hurts, because it's decaying, you know, but the fashion has definitely become less rigorous on my side. I mean, it never was. I personally was inspired by like how people on television dressed, and I would dress a lot about people who I thought were interesting on TV for a while.
And we have a couple examples.
Yeah, for a while, when I was in Washington, D.C., I kind of liked to dress like someone off of a 70s detective film. Not really Columbo, because I would wear a tweed with a little belt in the back, but it was also kind of like, it was a way of being academic, but also being kind of frumpy, which I liked. Yeah. You know, I'm like a big Murder, She Wrote fan, and I think like if no one has ever seen Murder, She Wrote, I really recommend that you see it because the fashion is incredible. Angela Lansbury wears things that are coordinated with every hotel room she's in. And every room she's in, she's got the exact right blouse, blazer combo. And she looks fantastic, you know? And sometimes you've got to go, okay, I wouldn't wear that. But she looks great.
That lavender skirt suit.
The lavender skirt suit's so important, yeah. So, and the politics of that are interesting because if you think about, like, for Angela Lansbury, that TV show is about a woman who's been widowed, right? So here's the character.
I don't really know the show.
Oh, okay. She's a widow. She had to kind of restart her career from being a teacher to being a mystery writer. And yet she's an older woman. She's not looking for anyone.
She solves crimes, though.
She solves crimes, but she's not looking for anyone. She's not dressing to impress. And at the same time,
she's very confident.
But she's confident in who she is, and so it's a really great.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Being confident. That's the one thing about dressing is you have to be confident.
Right.
Whether you look like a complete freak show, it doesn't matter if you're confident in that you're going to look great. You know what I mean?
Do you follow fashion in terms of like how other people?
I've been watching it fall apart over the last couple of years. Fashion as it's been as this sort of edifice for the last, I don't know, century or whatever. It's just radically changed forever. I was saying to Kid earlier, ever since they let the drag queens onto the Met Gala carpet, it all came tumbling down, you know, because when you invite the court jester to be at the dinner table with you, you know, the whole thing sort of, the balance changes, you know, the masks are off. It's like you have to realize it's a joke if this society lady pays $25,000 for this dress, which is a modest amount,
right?
And the drag queen across the table is wearing the same dress. You know what I mean? So that really changes how things have been in the past, because before the drag queen wasn't wearing the same dress; they were wearing something inspired by that dress. And now those drag queens have access to that same stuff,
right?
And it changes everything.
It's a kind of being assimilated into a culture that celebrates them. But in some ways, it's tentative. How long are you going to be celebrated before you're replaced?
Oh,
and I think it's, so for me, it's like, the interesting thing about drag is the ability to make something look something that looks upscale, but cheap. Because that's an affront to the amount of money that people will put into fashion to have that status within their circle. So to me, I get excited when someone's doing it cheaply and they flaunt it. This was only so-and-so. Like, that's considered gauche, right? This is only, like, this is a vintage shirt. It's a nice one, but I would say it's probably about $12, right?
But I think fashion, as everyone experiences it, has changed and is going to really change because of those changes. And I was also saying to Kid, like, there are all these young kids that are running the couture houses too, you know? And when that kind of sort of, it brings it all the way down to street level in a way that it hasn't been in the past, you know. I think
because the kids
maybe it's just another fad where they've invited the gays into the building for a brief time and will be asked to leave again shortly. You know what I mean? Maybe that's the case, and I'm just not seeing it. But
I don't know. Do you have that fear as a queer person? We're both queer.
Fear?
Oh no.
I don't especially want to be in the building with them anyway.
Right.
I prefer my own building.
Yeah, not interesting company. There's nothing that, so when we talk about them, are we talking about corporate culture? Are we talking about, what are we talking about?
Straight culture.
Straight culture, yeah.
I mean, it's not interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, unless somebody's an artist, that makes a difference. And it sort of veers them out of straight culture.
Right. For me,
but I find it so boring.
Yeah.
And always having to apologize, and always having somebody want to rub my nose in it.
And are we talking about something that's like, queerness is magical and straight culture isn't magical?
That's one thing.
Because I think for me, it's funny, it used to be about my sexuality, and now it has to do with the fact that I've had to invent myself within certain perimeters and use my imagination in ways that maybe straight people don't understand. And also, too, we are generalizing here, because I have a lot of friends that are straight.
I would have left by now.
What do you mean you would have left by now?
I would have left. I'd be insulted.
But it is an interesting thing, because I think and I don't know if this is true for you, so I'm just going to say it, but I've had to be politicized because of my status as a queer person.
Sure, you can't help but be politicized. You're thrust into that role.
And I'm wondering if there are groups of queer people, newer generations of queer people who don't see it as political at all, that don't feel like they have to fight for their identity as much as maybe there was an us and them kind of quality. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, well, for sure.
I mean, when it comes...
Well, it's like using that word queer. I was talking to a parent of 2 queer children recently, and their definition of queer is very different than my definition of queer.
Yeah.
You know, I started using the word queer when most of us did in the 90s, you know, when it was sort of an identification outside of the mainstream of gay culture and gay life.
Right.
And being queer was something outside of that. And now queer has become this sort of umbrella term for anybody who doesn't want to be perceived as not queer or normal.
Or mainstream,
Yeah,
or
mainstream,
assimilated.
Or assimilated, or whatever it means. But it's really a very different word than what it was for me.
Right.
You know.
Well,
and I don't blame them for using it. They can have it. I don't care. I don't own it. It doesn't mean anything to me. If it works for them, great, but they shouldn't confuse the two things.
and when you're making art, do you think of yourself as a queer artist when you're making it?
You know, I was talking to that same parent about my hashtags on my Instagram, where I always say queer art and queer artist. I always hashtag those.
Right.
And my work has almost nothing to do with that, with my queer self.
Yeah.
But I feel like I've always felt like being visible was really important.
Right.
And I think as I've aged and as I've made some inroads into the non-queer art world,
Right.
that I really want to keep that in the front.
Uh-huh.
So that any inroads I make into that non-queer art world, they know that I'm coming as a queer.
Right.
I'm not coming to assimilate with them. I'm not coming to be part of them.
Right.
That I'm coming in there as a queer always. Always. Because that's where my loyalties lie.
I've gone back and forth about it. Like, I want to be accepted for what I make and who I am without having to belong to a group. But then at the same, and I've been told, you know, if you want to get jobs at universities, you better start telling them you're a queer artist, because I hadn't been.
I've heard that one.
Yeah, you know, and so for me it was kind of like, that feels weird to me.
It's weird.
But it is also part of my identity. So it's something that I ride. Like when I was teaching, I had a diverse class of people who were artists of color and queer artists and trans artists and all sorts of folks, and a lot of them said we don't want to be considered, an artist that belongs to this niche or that niche, But at the same time, as I've seen them go on into the art world, I see that they're being labeled that way in order to fill spaces in like thematic shows. So it's an interesting thing where you're like, is my identity being used in order for me to succeed in a capitalist society, or am I in a capitalist society and kind of changing it from within, Because like if rather than saying like I'm waiting for the revolution, let's just pretend we're in revolutionary times right now. Where do we see?
We always have been.
Yeah.
In my lifetime,
Yeah.
it's felt that way.
Yeah.
At least since I was 17. I don't know. That's when I slammed the door on my childhood and walked out.
Yeah.
And it's felt like revolution to me since, and I've wondered why other people haven't felt that way over the years until things get really hot.
Yeah.
Until things get really, really hot, and then everyone's a revolutionary.
Right.
But
there's no need to be a revolutionary if you're comfortable.
if you're comfortable.
Like
Yeah.
I think
And
we.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, here we sit.
You want to talk to me about the guillotine?
The guillotine, the guillotine.
Guillotine.
Madame Guillotine, I'm all for it. I think if we were to execute a certain number of billionaires and senators, it would scare the others into submission. We could divide up some of that money and house the homeless and feed the hungry and do all the things we should be doing.
So you
At the cost of very few lives. I mean, we're talking a handful of lives
right.
for the greater good, so why not? It's just as good an idea as anything that they're suggesting in Congress.
That money that's being used to go and fly in
Good to
outer
go to
space.
space. Oh, for Christ's sake.
Have you seen the Summer of Soul? Because it's an interesting
I haven't
film.
seen it yet.
It's interesting is that's like 1969, is that right? 1969, and they're talking about flying into space, and then people who are basically
Yeah,
struggling.
he's on the moon.
Right, exactly. And it's like
Exact
nothing has
same
changed.
thing. Nothing has changed.
Nothing has changed.
Whatsoever.
Nothing.
Whatsoever.
Nothing has changed.
It's absolutely the same, except it's on an even grander scale. The horror is on a grander scale because more people are just dying of having nothing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Just dying of having nothing on the streets of LA. Kurt was just in LA for a week, and it's just like,
Right.
you know, pardon our human garbage, step over our human garbage on your way to the department store or whatever.
Really, and an interesting thing too, because I think about those things as an artist, and I go through this dance between like, is my artwork is it a political instrument? Am I changing the world with it? Obviously, my doodle is not. But
I felt
and
like
yet,
I made really political work for a while, and it was just like bouncing my head against a concrete wall constantly.
yeah,
It was just nothing but rejection and torture and pain
yeah.
for trying to make a difference. And so now I don't. I make pottery and I make happy little paintings.
But in some ways, you have to take care of yourself. I mean, I think that's a
100%.
big theme that came out
I
of the
had grown
pandemic.
to dread my art practice. I hated my art practice. It made me miserable.
Really?
I'm like, why am I being miserable over something that's supposed to bring me joy?
Because your art practice, and I would definitely recommend folks checking out his Instagram. It's Mark. It's me, Mark. Like
It's Mark Mitchell.
it's Mark Mitchell, and you'll see some artwork that is definitely labor.
I was very early on the pronoun thing too, because I always said my pronoun was it's rather than
That's the it's part.
that's the it's.
Because your
Not
work is
Miss or Mister, but it's.
right.
That's where that comes from. Also, that's sort of like an announcement too, ladies and gentlemen.
It's yeah. I thought it
Which I've always liked.
it had a little cabaret quality.
Yeah.
So I guess
As one does.
but your past work was very labor intensive,
Super labor intensive.
and people pay for labor.
They didn't pay me. Had they paid me, I would still be doing it. I could not get paid. I could not get arrested. I could not get shown. I could not get anything.
And yet you keep making it.
I kept making it.
Yes.
No, past tense. I kept making it, and then I took down my website, and I said, I'm never going to really learn to paint because it's too late to start. I'm never really going to be a great potter because it's too late to start, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start doing that. And I gave up the stuff that I was doing.
Well,
Because I wouldn't be happy.
right. How do we be happy and artists in the world?
I'm doing it right now.
You're doing it right now. And you're okay that it's not in a gallery.
Super okay. I've sold more paintings than I ever sold anything when I was doing.
When you were working for the gallery system. So it's really the gallery system that you felt like.
It's the whole art system too. Boy, I hate that more than the gallery system, I think. I hated being fucked with by curators. Pardon my language. Can we swear on this television program?
I think our child is out of the room, so yeah.
I mean, let's not get into what the art world is like for an artist.
I think
please.
the art world is failing the artist right now, and then you'll see that. Oh, excuse me. But I think there's a lot of artists who are finding ways to work outside of that system. But the problem that you start to face, and I'm a person who's been like literally institutionalized. I've worked in many, many museums for a long time, and I could see how it operated. You lose a certain amount of amplification of your work, and it's valued in a different sort of way. It's valued in a way that it becomes a commodity as opposed to something a human made for another human. And so I see that, and I see people having to negotiate that, artists having to negotiate that. And it's a funny thing for myself too. I mean, I go back and forth. I have always wanted to be, I worked in museums forever, wanted to be an artist that showed in museums, and wanted to be a person who would get that validity of it.
It's amazing.
Because
my very first show it ruined me. My very first show was a museum show. And it was lavish, and it was lovely, and I was treated like a king, and it was amazing. And then it was over, and it was like, so what? That's never going to happen again. I mean, it was like being elevated, and you go, oh my God, this is what it's like to be a really successful artist. This is amazing.
Right.
It's a really amazing feeling, and then it just goes away.
Yeah.
It's like any sort of high like that. It's never going to last. Unless you're really lucky. I know there's lots of little dangling tidbits along the way to make you feel like you're going to be the lucky one.
And I think it's also circles of people. Circles of people.
Want to tell you that you're going to be the lucky one too, because then you will continue to dance.
Right.
Which is what they want.
Right.
The curators want you to dance, and so they'll promise you the moon to keep you dancing. But you're not going to get the moon.
I wonder if there's another kind of system that might work for an artist. I mean, I respect the
I enjoy Instagram. That's like my whole art world right there. I took down both my websites, and I do everything I do through Instagram. It's super down to earth. It's easy. It's right there. You can see my whole art career in my Instagram feed. You can go all the way back and see all kinds of things.
You don't, and so you kind of get rid of your website and just use Instagram now? I did the same thing. I did the same thing.
I started paying for it. I didn't like how stodgy it looked, no matter how I tried to make it feel good. It was super stodgy and fake, and I didn't like it.
Yeah, the stodginess is unfortunate.
Websites are very yesterday, very pre-COVID.
There's going to be.
Times have changed.
So what's a post-COVID culture? What is
Instagram?
Instagram is the post-COVID culture.
That's where we'll live and die.
Well, that's why we're here, baby.
That's why we're in Tucson. Let's talk about Tucson. Let's not talk about the web.
Okay, let's talk about Tucson, because here we are with a group of people in MOCA Tucson, all here because they want to be here. Thank you for being here.
That's true. You want to be in Tucson. You don't accidentally really come to Tucson.
No, I did not make this. This was not a career move for me.
You have to purposely come here.
Yeah. So that's a different thing than New York, where I want to be at the top. Here you're like, I want to be with the lizards and the snakes and the bunnies.
You can't make it anywhere.
That's exactly it. After summer, I would say so. Or so, would you say that our credo is kind of like kind of cowboys out here?
It's a cowboy thing.
It's a cowboy thing. Is it a rebel thing in a little bit?
Yes, for sure.
Right.
I mean, it's very open. In some ways, it's a very Wild West-y kind of attitude in this town still.
Right.
There's not a lot of pretension. There's not a lot of.
There can't be. Your car is full of dust every time you get in.
Oh my god. The dust in this town is crazy.
I mean, one of the greatest things.
And the houseflies keep you humble.
What's that?
The houseflies. The houseflies here. It's the thing I hate about the West.
Right.
Is the flies.
We've had the little tiny flies that get eaten by the spiders, that get eaten by the geckos, that get eaten by our cat. So I feel kind of like I'm part of an ecosystem.
We have an indoor lizard right now that's living in our house. So that's been kind of nice. He pops up every once in a while. He lost half his tail.
If Tucson were to become the next capital of the art world,
I would leave.
I was going to say, what would that look like? How would that be different?
Why would you want that to happen?
I don't know.
That would be a terrible thing to happen in Tucson.
So it wouldn't reinvent what the art world is
well,
for you.
Well, I'm sorry. Repeat the question.
It would. I would say, could Tucson reinvent what creative culture is?
For me,
yes.
It has. I have.
Okay.
I came here, lost my mind, gave up all my hopes and dreams of anything I had decided to do before, and just relaxed and went, okay, I'm here among the cactus. There's not much happening. I'm just going to make some silly psychedelic paintings and be cool with it and stop trying to run the world.
And some of the best art is that way. Like a lot of the artists that I have been big fans of are people who've made those moves, have decided that that I look at those artists, especially those ones who are older, and who've said, my artwork now is about understanding who I am, understanding what life is, that it's a philosophical journey as opposed to one. I mean, I guess I'm a little bit of a believer. I hope you still want to be my friend. But I am a little still believer in an art world because I believe in art history. And I feel like there's some stories there that still need to be told. That aren't just the white, Western.
Well, I believe in art history. Definitely believe in art history.
Yeah.
I believe in art. I even believe in museum culture. I think it's more the commercial art world that I have to stand.
Right.
I mean, a super nerdy museum habit is fantastic.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
Or
right.
studying obscure, weird artists. There's this great painter, Agnes Pelton. Do No,
In Palm Springs Museum right
God,
now.
we were just there. I know. I saw the show for the second time, and we got to go to her cottage. My friend who I was staying with perhaps exaggerated my stature as an artist and got us an off-schedule tour of her little cottage. And these two divine old gays that run the place and live there were there, and it was just the most amazing thing. So they have a few of her original paintings, and he was the backbone of that show. This guy that lives in her cottage now. I mean, talk about living the dream for old gays. They have this great sort of cottage that's been reimagined as this very modern space behind these walls in Palm Springs. So there's a garden back there, and a little pool, and a guest house, and just all this craziness. They're just living the dream, you know, sort of. He now has given all of his knowledge of Agnes Belton to the people who did this show. So he's been able to unburden himself from his collection. He's lived in this house for 20 years, and he's been collecting her stuff when no one cared, when no one knew who she was. And so he saw her through to now where she's coming into her own, you know, and she's being taken seriously as a part of our history. And he just finally has this like sense of relief, like he doesn't have to do it anymore. Because he's been fighting Palm Springs for years, you know, to pay attention to her and to, you know, help promote and help build that up. So he's like this great old warrior queen. It's amazing. It was just fantastic. I loved it.
I love the idea of a warrior queen living in a cottage.
Oh, it was magic. It was divine. It was like why you go to places, you know. I never expected anything that cool to be in Palm Springs, that's for sure. There
are people in the desert doing all kinds of things.
I love the desert. I love the desert. It brings out just the best kind of bonkers in people. It really does. Or it gives you the freedom to be that kind of bonkers. Right. You can be out there by yourself with the cactus in your backyard. I mean, you can be out in the desert in your backyard here. It's amazing. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
I hope that was all right. We had some technical difficulties.
I know I went out really early, but that was all right.
That's all right. Yeah. Oh, well, thanks again. Please, everyone. Mark Mitchell, thank you for sharing. I hope that this was interesting for folks as you doodled away. What we're going to do is we're going to take a little technical break and see if we can iron out some of the technology stuff. It'll take about 5 minutes, and then we're going to get started again with Sarah this time. And on the hot seat. So, yeah, feel free to take a bio break or get some water. All right. And I know, bio break, that's a real corporate thing. I mean, kind of progressive corporate kind of lingo there. All right, so folks, thanks everyone who's been joining. We have a question. How do you think people moving here from the East Coast and West Coasts will change Tucson? So, how will people, you all, moving from East Coast or West Coast, how do you think that Tucson's going to change? All right, so the answer is, from our last artist, they're going to ruin it for everyone else. Oh, we all are going to do it. All right. I don't know about that. Okay, so I'm going to break. Thanks everyone who's been joining us online or on Instagram Live. We'll be starting up in 5 more minutes. And with Sarah Hubbs. Thanks again, live from MOCA.